So this weekend, Venerable Chuni was planned to go to offer a meditation workshop and a teaching on Happy Mind, Grateful Mind at the Unitarian Universalist Women's Retreat this weekend on Lake Coeur d'Alene. And we've had a little bit of a flu going around, so she wasn't able to make it, so I offered to jump in and see what I could do, because it would seem to be really important to show up. So it ended up being a lovely week, and it got me thinking about something. Here was a group of women. I would say the average age was maybe mid-50s. There were some 30, 35-year-old women, and then there were a few 87, 89-year-old women in the group. And their receptivity and their open-heartedness and their curiosity about the Buddha's teachings. And also, it became quite obvious shortly after, maybe the overnight and the next morning, that these women generally had been working many, many years on their minds. Maybe not with the Buddha's teachings, but their openness and their sharing about how they've transformed their minds and how the tools of the Dharma they were quite curious and very excited about integrating into their practice. So I was thinking about the stereotype that inevitably comes along and the conditioning that when you get to be a certain age in this country, you have to accept the fact that your mind is, you're getting kind of old and you're too old to change, and that's the way it is, and that there's this, and I'm sure that much of it has been based on some information that's true, but that our minds, when we get to a certain age, are very hard to change, and that we're kind of make do with what we have, and the opinions, the conditioning, the habits of thinking are kind of encrusted, and the ruts are pretty deep, and things like that. And so being in this group of women, and also seeing the huge transformation in the people, the men and women who have practiced the Dharma that I know personally, that are, you know, beyond middle age, is starting to throw this fallacy for me out the window. And part of it is that the mind is empty of any inherent existence, so it changes moment by moment. It's not findable under analysis. And that its qualities are clarity and awareness. There's nothing in the definition of mind that says it's inflexible. Once it gets to a certain age, it starts to decompose, or it stops changing. That there have been some scientific studies that say that the pliancy of the mind continues well into advanced age. So, and so what I noticed in the women was there's something about getting older, that the wisdom that comes from having done a lot of things, the things that you have succeeded in and the things that you have failed terribly in, and the lessons that you have learned, bring to the mind sort of this experience, at least these women this weekend, of just letting things happen and letting things arise and not being attached to the outcome. And so I have been very encouraged, and I certainly want to work on my conditioning in my own mind that says now that even though the body's starting to show some serious deconstruction, that my mind is actually more flexible and more pliant and more open than it was when I was even in my 20s and 30s. And I think that for me specifically, it has been the power of the Buddha's teachings that have brought me into awareness of how much the mind changes moment by moment, and that I am pretty much the creator of my experience, and that if I want a flexible, open-hearted mind, I can certainly create that. But it seems like women in various spiritual traditions working on their minds and hearts, that it's something that can be practiced even in a broader scope than just the Dharma. So I was very inspired by this weekend to be in a group of very childlike, young thinking, energetic, very kind people. And so it really inspired me to not get stuck in my own ways of thinking. May I continue to become more flexible, more pliant, more open-hearted, more joyful, and more spontaneous the older I get. And I think that the Buddha's teachings have become a pivotal part for me as far as making that possible. So I just wanted to share my experience this weekend. And also, the other two pieces is that the power of the Dharma can change the mind, as we saw with Don, who was executed last week, that within a very short time, his deepest aspirations to transform his mind made a difference in a very short time. And then our little cat Achi, who was here for 19 years, that was totally volatile, unable to be handled for the longest time of his life. But through the kindness and the patience and the love and the Dharma that I think he received some very powerful imprints, it changed the mind of a little animal. So I've seen enough evidence within my own mind and other beings' minds that the power of the Dharma is indeed powerful enough to change the minds of any sentient being who is within its periphery.